So this is a part 2 to a previous episode I did. My husband cheated on me with my best friend. If you didn't listen to part 1, the link is below. Let's get right into part 2. It's hard to believe that nearly a year has passed since the morning my world cracked open on my kitchen stairs. Back then, I was still trying to catch my breath after discovering Mark's months-long affair with Sophie. I remember sitting on my father's cabin porch later that night, clutching my swollen belly, feeling as though I'd stepped into someone else's life. Since then, there have been countless tears, therapy sessions, court dates, and whispered conversations in hospital hallways. There's also been laughter, unexpected romance, and a kind of peace I never imagined I'd find. Throughout it all, a chorus of strangers offered advice, empathy, and at times, tough love. It's strange how people you never met can feel like a lifeline. This community became my own little corner of the internet, a place where I could pour my heart out and know someone was listening. I hadn't meant to go for so long without an update. Life has a way of swallowing weeks whole, and then suddenly, months have slipped by. It didn't help that, for a while, I couldn't access my account at all. One afternoon, I tried logging in to post an update, only to find that my password no longer worked. A password reset email never arrived. At first, I wondered if Mark had something to do with it. It turned out that my former best friend was the one who shut me out. She'd reset my passwords and changed my associated email to her own. It still amazes me how far her betrayal will stretch. It amazes me too, OP. Sometime after I regained control, life delivered another bizarre scene. A month before I managed to sign back in, I was in my kitchen chopping vegetables for dinner. Jake was in the backyard with my children, yelling as he pretended to be a dragon while they chased him. I heard the front door open. That wasn't unusual. Both Nancy and Ruth had keys to my house because they helped with the kids so often. But when I glanced up, it was Sophie, standing in my entryway like she belonged there. There was no knock, no call ahead. She simply turned the knob and walked in, as though a year of chaos hadn't gone by. I gripped the knife automatically, not to use it, but because my hands needed something to hold. Calmly but firmly, I told her that she needs to leave. I didn't ask how she got a key. I only pointed towards the door and warned her to get out before I called the police. She started screaming, accused me of threatening her, calling me insane. Jake heard the commotion and rushed inside. He didn't ask questions. He simply wrapped his arms around her shoulders and physically escorted her outside. Oh, she's crazy. She fought him, shouting that she was there to ask for forgiveness, but her tone made it clear that she wanted to provoke. She said she would ruin my life. She said all she wanted to do was talk. It was all so surreal. In less than 5 minutes, the police arrived because she had called them on us, weaving a story about being lured to my home and attacked. She claimed I tried to stab her. She said Jake had punched her. I don't know if she thought I'd panic and beg the officers to let her go. Instead, I took them to the computer, pulled out my security cameras, and showed footage of her walking uninvited into my house, me backing away with a knife held towards the cutting board, and Jake calmly guiding her out while never raising a hand. She didn't know about those cameras, did she? The officers took one look and left, taking Sophie with them. Oh, that girl is unhinged. After that, Jake stayed at my house every night. Is the romance Jake? He said it was because he didn't trust her to not try something, and maybe there was some truth to that. But I think he also realized we all felt safer with him there. Something shifted for me during those evenings when he'd help with homework, give the kids baths, tuck them in, and then sit with me in the living room after everyone else was asleep. He became my partner long before we ever gave labels to our relationship. In the weeks that followed, Sophie retaliated in every way she could. She hacked into every one of my social media accounts, including those I barely used. She posted vile messages on my Facebook and Instagram, claiming that I was neglectful, immoral, and even abusive. She filed baseless complaints with my employer. I'm a nurse at a local hospital, telling them that I stole drugs and mistreated patients. Human Resources suspended me for a week while they investigated. I sat in a conference room, tears burning my eyes, as my boss and her boss asked me to recount the nightmare my personal life had become. I handed over timestamps, security footage, and witness statements. In the end, I was reinstated, but the humiliation of having to defend myself because someone I used to call my sister wanted to spite me still stings. Don't feel humiliated, Mama. You know you didn't do anything wrong. After that, I filed for a temporary restraining order. A few days later, Sophie tried to pick it's going too far now. A few days later, Sophie tried to pick up my eldest from school. Thank God I had already spoken with the school administration and given them a strict list of who could take my child. They escorted her out. I changed every lock on my house. When we went to court, the judge granted a restraining order for 7 years. Apparently, a permanent order in our state requires proof that someone is an immediate threat to your life. 7 years is good, though. Showing digital harassment, false police reports, and attempted kidnapping wasn't enough. That is kind of crazy, though. Still, 7 years felt like breathing room. If she violates it, she goes to jail. Part of me wanted to scream that 7 years was a slap on the wrist. The other part wanted to pretend that she didn't exist anymore. Meanwhile, Mark has remained a phantom. He has not attempted to call or see his children. He has not asked about them through his parents or Jake's. He has, as far as I know, continued his life as though his first family never existed. Wow. I was pegging him as a great husband at first, and just wow. Through Ruth and Joseph, I learned that he remarried quickly and has another baby on the way. Wow. They received an invitation to his wedding and a baby shower. I felt a pang of pity for his new wife when I heard that. Someone else will one day realize that he could walk away from his flesh and blood for the next shiny promise of happiness. When my eldest daughter said quietly over dinner one evening that she wished Jake was her dad because Mark never really played with them and was mean when I wasn't around, it confirmed something I had suspected. Their lack of questions about him wasn't an absence of grief. It was acceptance that he had never truly been there. It's a strange thing, mourning the loss of a father your children never really had. On the home front, we've been working hard to cultivate a different kind of peace. Our children continue to see a therapist. She told me recently that they smile more than they cry, and that my oldest is open about her feelings and quick to speak up if something makes her uncomfortable. She did mention that my eldest asked about calling Jake dad. At first, the word caught me off guard, but I've always insisted that I wouldn't interfere in their relationship, but in my own heart, I wasn't quite ready to give another man that title. Jake didn't push. He said he would earn it at their pace. He whispered one night as we were curled up on the couch that when, not if, we marry, he fully intends to treat them as his own. For now, my middle child still calls him Uncle Jake, and the baby babbles Dada indiscriminately, though lately it has been directed at him. I decided to let them decide. I refuse to let my own fear of letting go of labels stand in the way of them having another person to love them unconditionally. Jake has woven himself into our daily life in ways both big and small. He jokes that he's only in my house every night because he wants to ward off potential intruders, but the truth shines through when he leaves for a 12-hour shift at the fire station and texts our babysitter every few hours to ask for photos of the kids. He spends his days off coaching their indoor soccer team, wearing a whistle around his neck and a smile that stretches across his face when he sees my son score a goal. He sits at the tiny table during tea parties and lets our toddler put a crown on his head. He helps them with their homework, even when I see him glance at his phone to make sure he remembers how to do long division. He listens as they talk about superheroes and who got what sticker on their behavior chart at school. When I grow overwhelmed or anxious, he's there to say, "It's okay to take a break. I've got this." At the same time, he respects my need for autonomy. He didn't rush me when it came to the word girlfriend. He simply called me his girlfriend in conversations with others until one day I laughed and told him it was fine. The world wasn't going to implode if I admitted it out loud. He accompanied me to therapy, not because he felt obligated, but because he wanted to understand how best to support me and how to navigate his own feelings about the year we'd spent apart and now blending of our lives. His humor had become a bomb. There's lightness in our home that I never realized was missing until it filled the rooms. Sometimes he reads bedtime stories. He uses silly voices, and I listen from the hallway, knowing my children would grow up with the memory of an adult man unabashedly pretending to be a princess or a dragon. Other times, he asks me to take the kids outside so he can cook dinner alone, and I later find a meal better than anything I'd manage, with candles on the table and music playing softly in the background. It would be misleading to pretend that I still don't think about Sophie. For a long time, my feelings about her were a knotted mess of rage, betrayal, grief, and a strange kind of gratitude. Gratitude? I mean, I guess she showed you who your husband really was. She dismantled my marriage and humiliated me. She attempted to hack my accounts, spread lies about my character, and take my child from school without my permission. But, in a twisted way, she freed me from a loveless marriage. Had she not crossed that line, I might still be quietly resentful, tethered to someone who considered me a convenience. But in all reality, you wouldn't have known, right? Because he was still acting like the best husband. So you wouldn't have known. You would have actually been living in, I don't know what word to use, where you don't know what's going on. So just ignorance. You'd have been living in a blissful ignorance. So in my opinion, I wouldn't have thanked her for that. I actually wouldn't have thanked her for anything. As time went on, more pieces of her story emerged, each one sadder than the last. After our friendship imploded and she lost her family's support, she spiraled. I later heard from mutual acquaintances that she had been using drugs. Is that what has been going on? I never witnessed it myself. In the months when she and Mark began their affair and it later came to light, my days were consumed with caring for my dying father, as it should have been, carting my children to and from school, cooking meals, and scheduling prenatal appointments. Again, as it all should have been. Had she shown up to my house high, I would have noticed. I've worked in healthcare since I was 20, and certain signs are unmistakable. I believe her descent into drug use happened after she burned those bridges. Tragically, the only person who knew and didn't lift a finger to help her was Mark. Even in her worst, I wish someone had reached out. Looking back, it's clear to me how deep her insecurities ran. She was always boy crazy, chasing male attention as though it was oxygen. There's no shame in wanting to be desired, but Sophie treated it like a scoreboard. Teenage boys can be shallow. She carried weight in her stomach and her hips. I, on the other hand, didn't weigh more than 100 pounds until after my first pregnancy. At parties, men would flock to me, even if Sophie were the one flirting. I ignored them, but I think that pattern planted a seed of resentment in her, a belief that she would always be second best, even though you never treated her that way. Years later, I married Mark. Shortly after our wedding, she married a guy I once had a high school crush on. It had been an innocent crush. I never acted on it. In his wedding speech, he joked that he'd settled for second best. Oh, absolutely not. Everyone hated him for it. We begged Sophie not to marry him once his true colors showed long before the wedding, but she didn't listen. She believed we were jealous, and she cut me off for a while because of it. Girl, she had showed you red flags, orange flags, every shade of red, maroon. She had showed you all these flags, but I guess, I'm not judging you, because if you love your husband, if you love your wife, if you love your best friend, if you love your family members, sometimes you don't see those red flags. I think her sleeping with Mark was her twisted way of proving that she could win. Win what? That she wasn't always the runner-up. You were not in her eyes, and that's all that matters. All these randos around, what they think of you doesn't matter. Only your friend. That's the person that you should have been thinking about, what she thought of you. When Mark didn't leave me for her, she clung to the fantasy that he might choose her one day. There's no actual way to know what she imagined. I'm just surmising here. What I do know is that she needed validation so badly that she burned every relationship around her. By the time she finally realized she had nothing left, it was too late. There were other revelations too. I discovered she had destroyed multiple marriages in the span of a year. Old friends of hers cut ties when they realized she wasn't just my cautionary tale. She had a pattern of inserting herself into other people's relationships, of seeking out attached men as though conquest proved her worth. She needs therapy, for real, for real. Something's really wrong, and we need to get to the root of that. Even when confronted with the harm she was causing, she doubled down. When Mark remarried, she tried to befriend his new wife in hopes of getting close to him. Oh, God. He told his new wife to block her and slammed the door in her face. It was sobering to realize that the man who left his own children didn't want her either. She wasn't good enough to keep, only good enough to use as an excuse to blow up our family. Mark's parents, Ruth and Joseph, and my own father figures were outraged, not just at her, but at him as well. They were already angry about the affair. Seeing him abandon his children for what he called a fresh start pushed them to the brink. They warned his new wife about his past in case he painted me as the villain, but she didn't care. She saw it as winning some twisted competition. I mean, that's speculation, but some women like to, quote-unquote, fix people, so I don't think she was really thinking that she was winning. She was probably thinking, like, I'll be the one he falls for. I'll be the one who he never does this to. To me, it screamed desperation. In the end, Ruth and Joseph chose us. They told Mark they wouldn't tolerate half-hearted fathering, then watched him disappear. They continued to pick up the children, bring casseroles, and text me to ask if I needed anything. When I told them that I wanted to pursue termination of Mark's parental rights, they didn't argue. They said they were done trying to be the bridge between him and the kids. The man who had once watched his son being born and held him with tears in his eyes was now content to miss his daughter's first steps. It was a hard truth to swallow. A few months after the affair exploded, Sophie died of an overdose. I was not expecting that. I was hoping that, she's going through all this and one day she could see that she was spiraling and she went to therapy. I was not expecting that at all. I didn't initially plan to share that update widely. Some things felt too heavy to turn into content. But grief is weird. It demands witnesses sometimes. I didn't want to pretend that she simply vanished into oblivion. I told my children that Aunt Sophie had died, and they took it well. Perhaps because they had hardly seen her in the last year. Nancy and Robert retreated for a time, seeking grief counseling. They see the kids once a week, and Nancy told me it helps her to spend time with them. Jake didn't want counseling. He prefers to process quietly, though he attended one session with me at my therapist's urging. I bring it up gently every so often, reminding him that talking isn't a sign of weakness. I want to put down the anger I've been carrying towards her because it's heavy and because holding on to it doesn't bring back what I lost. I will always love her. I will always hate what she did. The two truths coexist inside me. Life has also brought me some unexpected joy. Roughly 2 weeks after Sophie's passing, Jake pulled me aside one evening after the kids were in bed. His hands were shaking, and he took a deep breath and told me he wanted to marry me. He said he'd loved me ever since we were building forts in Nancy and Robert's backyards. He said when we were 5, he proclaimed to our group of friends that one day he would marry me. And even though life took us on different paths, the feeling never really disappeared. He said he didn't want to wait any longer. I stared at him, my heart pounding. There was a part of me that wanted to say yes immediately, but there was another part of me that recognized we were still wading through grief. So I told him I needed to sit with this for a while. I explained that grief can make you do impulsive things. I said that I wasn't saying no, but I needed us to be sure we were building a life on solid ground and not only on the shaky foundation of shared trauma. He looked disappointed but nodded. Girl, he's been there through all of this. He has not let you down once. And I think when he saw what happened to Sophie, it was more, I don't want to wait another day because you don't know when your time is up. I don't really think it was on the trauma or grief or anything like that. A month later, after the dust had settled somewhat, he asked again. This time, he had thought about it from every angle. He didn't present a ring with a flourish. He sat on our living room floor amid scattered toys, held my hands, and told me he didn't want to wait for a milestone or a perfect time because those don't exist. He had wanted to marry me since we were kids. He wanted my children to be his children and for us to call them ours. He wanted to stand in front of his parents and my chosen family and declare that he'd loved me for so long and declare that he'd loved me for as long as he could remember. With tears in my eyes, I said yes. We decided on a long engagement. I don't want to rush into another wedding. I want us to savor our life together as it is and let time do its work. Maybe a year or two. We'll plan something small with just our closest family and the kids. Maybe we'll elope on a mountaintop or in someone's backyard with bare feet and laughter. We have time to decide. Right now, being engaged feels like enough. To me, in my opinion, an engagement is to get to know the person better. But I think y'all have been basically living together for it's been a year. So that's, I don't know. I was going to say that's kind of like the engagement time and y'all have known each other your whole life. It's not like you just met him, but I'm just saying my opinion. Nancy reacted to the news with tears of joy. She called my mother's memory to mind, telling me how she and my mom used to joke about us getting married when we were little. Robert hugged me and told Jake that he better never break my heart. Ruth and Joseph clapped and asked when they could start planning. I never imagined my life would look like this. My father gone, my mother long gone, my marriage destroyed, my best friend dead, and yet my family still expanding, bending, and embracing new shapes. As for Mark, he continues to be absent. He has not reached out to see the kids. They've stopped asking about him. And in my state, I was advised to file abandonment charges. It doesn't mean he'll be barred from ever seeing them. It simply means that if he wants to, he has to petition the court and explain himself. The house feels lighter these days. My middle child has become a huge ray of sunshine, the kind of kid who laughs at everything and hugs you randomly. My baby is toddling around, babbling words and laughing at her siblings. My oldest thrives on the soccer field, chasing after the ball with the same determination she used to put into drawing chalk murals on our sidewalk. And me? I'm still healing. There are nights where I lie awake thinking about Sophie, about Mark, about my father. There are moments when anger flares up unexpectedly, like when a memory surfaces of Sophie and me laughing in high school. There are days where I feel guilty for being happy after so much loss. A friend recently told me that healing isn't about erasing pain, but learning to carry it differently. I'm working on that. I'm learning that I could be angry and grateful at the same time. People often ask if there's anything I would change. If I could go back, would I marry Mark? Would I be friends with Sophie? Would I quit my job sooner? The truth is, I don't know. Each choice led me to the life I have now, one filled with children who know they are loved, in-laws who have become chosen family, and a partner who loves me with a steadiness that I didn't know I needed. I wouldn't wish my path on anyone, but I wouldn't trade the lessons I've learned. I learned that love and loyalty matter more to me than comfort. I learned that sometimes the people you think you can't live without become the ones you must live without. I learned that betrayal can be a brutal teacher, but healing is possible. So that's where my story rests for now. Thank you for bearing witness, for sending kind words when I felt like I was drowning, for offering perspective when my anger threatened to consume me. I don't know what the next chapter will hold. Maybe someday I'll plan about an elopement. Maybe there will be more bumps in the road. But for now, we're taking it day by day. If anything else happens, I promise I'll let you know. Until then, we're out here living, loving, healing, and refusing to let the worst thing that has happened to us define the rest of our lives. Thank you for that story, OP. I am so sorry to hear of everything that happened in this story. It's a bunch of ups and downs, and one second you're happy, the next second you're sad, the next second you're shocked. It's just, that was a lot of twists and turns in that story, and I'm so sorry that you were going through all of that. I do want to remind you, though, that all the stories are based on true events. Names, dates, locations, and certain scenarios may have been changed to protect the OP. In the meantime, thank you for listening to the story. I hope it helped somebody out there in some form or fashion. Thank you so much for taking your time out to be here with me. And I'll see you in the next one.